welcome back. So, when you were in high school, did you know what you were going to be? Did you know what you were going to be for the rest of your life? Well, our next guest had a very interesting life. He was a grip. A what? My name is Vin DeQuino. Our next guest is Rick Bruck.
Yes.
Rick, what the heck's a grip?
I think a grip was the first technical position after the cameraman in motion pictures.
Ah, so you were involved in motion pictures.
Motion pictures was the part of my life that I retired from. I started out in the stagehand business, which was television and Broadway, or legitimate theater.
Wow, so you were in legitimate theater to begin with.
Yes.
Now you're following in your father's footsteps, yes?
My father, my uncle, my cousin, my brother, my other cousin, and then my other cousin, and then my grandfather put him, what I was told was a charter member of Local 1 in the IATSE, which is the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees.
Wow.
So they just sort of shortened that to IATSE.
So you were one of those many people behind the scenes that made motion pictures and stage happen.
It's a myriad amount of people who actually happen to be pushing the product forward, and the camera would be on you, and all of these people that you can't see here or there. I was
Just
one
like,
of those guys.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah.
Well, this studio has a whole bunch of people making this happen. And you were one of those guys behind the scenes.
For years and years and years. And
Wow.
years. I've been retired now about 10 years. And now I'm writing, and that's how I met Vinny.
Yep,
Vinny's
that's
been
right.
helping me in my new career.
And I had a chance to see some of that writing. Good writing, by the way. And there was a time when you were out there being a grip. And what, again, is a grip? Someone who
I
helps
pick things
the
up and I put things down.
Okay.
I mean, that's how I believe it started. And then as the technology became more apparently needing specialists, grips got more and more jobs. So a grip can be a construction grip, a shooting grip, a rigging grip, and a variety of other things.
Someone who handles the equipment.
Not the equipment, some equipment.
Some
'Cause we have
equipment.
electricians. This would be the prop department. This would be the sound department. I'm pointing to a microphone here. There's so many people, hair and makeup, et cetera, et cetera. But a grip basically was moving the camera. Now, also a grip ended up taking away light because the light needs to be sometimes shaded. You get a reflection and things of that nature. Plus, when they stopped just using what was available, like a train to photograph, and they started building sets, somebody had to put the sets up. The carpenters would build them, but somebody had to actually set them up.
Set them up and move them away.
Exactly, exactly. And when you needed something on location outside the window, they would be rigging where the lights could be used on scaffolding without destroying the building and being there temporary. So there's nothing permanent in motion pictures. It all gets thrown away at the end.
And all gets moved all around during the show. So you were very much a stagehand or a...
Can I help you here?
Yeah, help me, will you? I mean,
You had
we
different
didn't call them
departments.
stagehands, we called them crew.
Crew,
You were
yes,
part of the stage crew.
But when you're dealing in New York City, you're dealing with the unions.
Right.
And the unions became very specialized. And you really need it because the cost per hour, per day, you really want people to get in and get out as quickly as possible.
So they had very specific jobs.
Exactly.
I know that when I directed plays for middle school for like 15 years, and I know that when I put on certain plays, I appointed certain kids, like, you're responsible to bring that hat over there, make sure it's there when he goes to get it. So that kid was responsible for that hat, and it was a very important job. And I used to, try to say to them, look, you need to bring that prop in and out. It needs to be there, and it needs to be gone when that scene is gone. So there are some very important jobs that people don't realize that have to be done. And you can't just rely on it to happen. It doesn't just happen. Somebody has to do certain things.
Well, what happened, what you're saying now, people my age can barely remember live TV because before videotape, there was only live TV.
Wow.
That's why at 11 o'clock at night, everything shut down because the people would just go home.
Yeah.
But television commercials, they were live. Everything was live.
Wow.
So, yeah, if you didn't get your cue right,
Yeah.
it
You
was
messed
live.
it up. It was live.
There wasn't like, can we re-record
Yeah.
that?
I mean, that's with theater. I mean, when I was doing plays, we had 500 people in the audience.
Yes.
And if the one kid didn't roll that prop out right, it ran into other furniture, or the next scene was beginning with the old set. You know, it was very, very important that things that had to be done got done.
I found that live theater was the most exciting moment of my life.
Wow.
Because when the curtain went up, everybody amped up, besides just the actors, but the
You're right.
audience, the orchestra, everybody that was terribly exciting.
Yeah, and that's very hard for people who are not in theater to understand, that when a performance begins, the stage crew is just as important as the actors. Because if they don't do what they have to do, those actors can't do what they have to do. And people don't realize that everybody deserves an applause at the end of a good performance, because it takes more than the actors to put on a great play.
Absolutely. The departure from being a really talented actor is that in motion picture, you don't get to do a scene. You and I have cameras on it, so we'll do one of Vinny doing what Vinny does, one of Rick doing what Rick does, and then we'll stop, and then we'll do a shot where both of us are doing it together.
Yeah.
Unless you have the ability to have multiple cameras, which is, you know, it just keeps escalating in price and everything else.
So let's talk about the evolution of motion pictures and live TV. In your lifetime, you must have seen amazing changes.
I have.
Yep.
I truly have.
Talk to me about some of those changes.
Well, the first aspect of motion pictures, which, well, let me just backtrack a little bit. When you go into a theater, everything is there.
Yeah.
Everything that you need is already there. When you go into a motion picture studio, nothing is there.
Wow.
When I mean that there's nothing, not even a light on a stand to light it up.
We saw that today when we came in here. There was an empty room.
So we put in the floor, we put in the pipes above it to hang the lights, we put in absolutely everything. And the technology of it just kept escalating from the first motion pictures, which was a hand crank, no sound. Then when he started bringing in sound, and actually there was no electricity for lighting.
Wow.
There was no lights bright enough to equal the sun, which is what the early film stock required. So that's why they had the Black Maria. Some people don't understand what that is, but that was Thomas Edison's studio. It was a round thing on wheels, and he could just keep pivoting it so the sun would light it up.
Oh, wow.
There was no lights.
Wow.
So there were no electricians per se. In fact, when the first night shot, and I may be wrong about this, but I believe it was on King Kong, and they didn't have any lights that would light up the night, so they used the same ballistic lights that they would shoot up over a battleground when they would have a midnight raid. That's how they lit King Kong.
Wow.
So then they started saying, well, that won't work. So getting back to the technology part, my first job was at the NBC electric shop. And the biggest bulb we had was a 10K, a 10,000 watt bulb. And it was so inefficient that they actually put grit in the base of the bulb because the top of the bulb would get burned up from the tungsten. So you could take it out and shake it and clean the bulb and put it back in. Today's technology has surpassed where I was.
Yeah,
now they have the LEDs, and they look like fluorescent tubes and have different rows of the primary colors, and they can adjust it. They also got to pass videotape now. It's really hard to imagine. Everybody knows that they have great images, but before high definition, there was no way to actually take a video and put it on a big screen. when they came up with high definition, I was lucky enough to be with one of the crews that, I think it was Sony, had I think 7 or 8 crews around the world making images, because the light's different in Italy as it is from Australia. And I was working on one that we did in New York. And then we went to the Ziegfeld Theater. Now the Ziegfeld Theater was, I think, one of the last big screens. They took the video and put it up on the big screen, and I said, wow, that's the end of film.
Wow.
That is the end of film. And it was. And now
Yep.
nobody uses film.
No, don't have to anymore.
No.
Yeah, there's so many different things. I have a neighbor up the street from me. He works with a lot of these rock groups, and he does the lighting for the rock groups. And 90% of his time is spent in front of a computer to organize all the lighting for these shows, all done on computer. So it's a whole different age.
Yeah.
So you've seen the transition from those days to these days.
Well, that and the beginning of the computer-generated images, because some things you just have to build because the actors have to react to them. We tried doing something on Boardwalk Empire where they just wanted to use a blue screen. So they had the actors walking around like they were shopping, but there was nothing to relate to. So they just looked like people who were like zombies, like, oh, I wonder what would that be if there really was a window and something in it. What do you think, honey? I don't know. What do you see? So some things you really need to have.
Yeah. Now, you worked in studios?
Well, you have studios, and New York lacked them for quite a while. But in the last 15 to 20 years, there's a proliferation. So the motion picture business burgeoned in New York. I always felt that there would be more work here if there were more studios, but it was like, where do you put the cart in the horse? Why are we going to build studios if they won't film here? So it gradually came to the point where they started making more and more stages. At Brooklyn Navy Yard, I forget how many stages they have there, because I retired before they built another one, but they must have like 20, 25 stages now.
And in the early years, a lot of it was Hollywood, right?
It's an interesting fact, Vinny, because I can't certify it, but I understand that they started going to California because Edison wouldn't let them use his cameras without royalties.
Really?
So what happened in New York City would be that he would get some guys come in and just bust up the cameras that weren't his, and they just like ran away to the West Coast where New York couldn't get at them. And obviously there was other reasons.
So then
to
pretty
stay
soon.
there.
Now you were never in the California bunch.
No, I'm not a traveler. No,
So most of your work was here in New York.
Well, yeah, I got involved with some specialty equipment once I got into the big union. I went from Local 1 into Local 52, and in that union we were doing major motion pictures, TV series, et cetera, et cetera. And I wanted to do something that would make me stand out from the crowd. So I built a camera car and a process trailer for photographing actors in cars. And I had a huge success with that. And then I started getting calls to go to various places like Montreal or Toronto with my rig, sometimes further south, up in Maine. So that was my tripping, and I realized that I didn't enjoy living in a motel.
Yeah, and a lot of it was on the road, yeah?
Yes, yeah.
So, and long hours, isn't it? Or was it like an 8 to 4, that's it?
It depended. If you were in a studio, you could keep going. When the sun came up and the sun went down, you sort of ran out of options. So I mean, you could keep condensing the shot, but you couldn't get the full background lit up. So that was another issue.
About how many people were involved behind the scenes of producing a show like that?
Well, let's take Boardwalk Empire. Boardwalk Empire could have 200 people just being photographed in the background if it was a big set. They actually built a boardwalk in Greenpoint.
Wow.
Raised up all of the buildings, et cetera, and then opposite that they took containers for shipping containers, and they stacked them up 4 or 5 tall, and they tried to paint them blue so they could do the chroma blue.
Oh, wow.
And sort of get away with that. They built that whole thing. But another time they went to Rockaway, and they had to use, they had access to the original boardwalk that had been rebuilt after one of the hurricanes. And they had to have seating for all of the actors and all of the crew. So it was like maybe 200 people having to be fed and being allowed toilets and being transported there. So you need all of the people who feed them, transport them, and clean the toilets and everything else you can imagine. So yeah, it mushrooms.
Now, were you involved in some shows that we would recognize? What were some of the shows that you were involved in?
I like to bounce around, so I didn't particularly stay with them. Sometimes I liked the guy that I was working with, so I stayed with Nurse Jackie for a while.
Oh, well, really?
Obviously, Boardwalk Empire. And I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that. The Sopranos.
Oh, The Sopranos, really? You were
The
involved in that?
Sopranos was so well done. I mean, obviously, if you've seen the show, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, oh yeah, I've seen them.
I did on the pilot. I actually saw the original location for Tony Soprano's house up on the hill. And I was surprised years later, I was using my equipment for that when he's in the opening scenes in the cigar smoking thing, that was my equipment doing that. But years later when I actually went to the stage where it was, I was amazed that it wasn't shot in Tony Soprano's house. It was just an interior.
Wow.
I mean, they could fool me. They're just so good.
Yeah. Now, so when we talk about equipment, you for a long time managed equipment, but then you went into the business of renting equipment or?
Well, I found out that there was a thing called camera cars, and I love automobiles. And I said, well, what's a camera car? And someone that I knew had an idea for one. So I worked with him, took his equipment out, and I found out what was good about his ideas and what wasn't. Then I came up with my own idea, and I have some pictures here that.
Oh, good.
If when you're ready for it, I
yeah,
can
ready
show you.
for it. Let's see what
This
you have.
one is. This is what is called a camera car. Now this is being used with 3 motion picture cameras for background. So now they're going to use this as a technical shot where the background is moving, but whoever the actors are aren't going to be moving. So you'll see 3 cameras here in crews. This was used for shots like that, or if the car was moving next to you and you wanted to catch that particular thing, that would be with the camera car. When you put an actor in a car and you see them driving, they can't drive because they have a light in their face, they have a camera in their face, they're trying to emote, and if you have to hand somebody a gun or do something like that, it's impossible. Plus, you have to...
so the equipment does the moving.
The equipment does move. So what I did was I built what's called a process trailer. Now, the process trailer became very important with the technology of automobiles with automatic brake systems. It was very hard to tow them because the brakes would start to lock up. And it's like, oh, something's wrong with the way the tires are spinning, and the computer would lock them up. So then we had to put them on trailers. There wasn't a good trailer in the city, so I said, oh. Somebody showed me a picture of one that was in Florida where the axles of the trailer could spread out. So I said, okay, I want to do that. So I built my own personal process trailer. This is my design. And I can't really tell we're good there because your lights aren't up. Anyway, this put me to the top of the charts. And then I made tons and tons of money with this piece of equipment. You can see that there's a car, and you can see that there's a platform, and that railing is put up to keep the people from falling off of it. So they can get...
your car is attached to that car?
Yeah, the first car picture that I showed you would be towing that trailer.
Wow.
So that became a rolling stage.
And then you'd be able to follow this so that the camera could actually go with the car?
Yes.
Wow. Cool.
Yes, and that was that. So yeah, that was the best of my life. I made tons of money. I worked a couple of days a month, and my wife said, Rick, if you don't get a regular job, you're not going to get your pension. You're not going to have your welfare. So I said, okay. But I had enough of living in hotels and doing that. Then I went back into the stages, and I worked mostly as a construction grip. Construction grips puts up a certain amount of the rigging and the walls, et cetera, and we only had to do a 10-hour day. That was a short day.
Yeah,
They don't get any shorter than that. So that was
Wow.
like a 60-hour week was, 50, 60-hour week was,
So you were right there on the set the whole time.
yeah, that was exciting too. It was really, I did a lot of interesting shows too.
Now you have another picture there.
This, I'm looking in there at this beard and such like that. Once upon a time, I looked this good. This is a vanity photo. It has nothing to do with the motion
There you
picture
go.
business.
Oh God, look at that.
Yeah.
And who's that you're with? He looks familiar.
That's Darren McGavin.
Wow.
I didn't take this picture. I don't remember why I was standing next to him, but God, I look good.
Yeah, look at that.
So yeah, that was the commercial part of my life. We did a lot of television commercials in the 70s.
So you spent a lot of years behind those cameras.
You'd be amazed what I've seen. You
Wow.
would be amazed.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of hours and a lot of time. How do you train for something like that?
Essentially, it's like training for a coal miner. If your father was a coal miner, pretty good chance you're going to be a coal miner. So it was sort of trickle down.
Did your father take you on the set when you were a kid?
I never worked with my. Well, actually, he did on occasion. I was on Jan Murray's Treasure Hunt, and it was Family Day where the crews could bring their kids in.
Wow.
I wasn't on camera or anything, but I got to take home a box of some little plasticky thing.
Now, what was his job specifically? Did he have
My father was an electrician.
an electrician?
We had basically in Local 1 3 choices: carpenters, electricians, and props. So when it came up for me to choose which one of those to go into, he said, "Son, this is what you're going to do. The props are idiot, the carpenters are drunk, you're going to be an electrician." I said, "Okay." And that was that. And being an electrician in Local 1 was much more challenging because they also did special effects. I worked on Dark Shadows.
Oh, really?
Really, that
See?
was super. Yeah.
Dark Shadows. That was
So
a
I
great
made the
show.
cobwebs. We put the fireplaces in. We did the effects with the water effects. You put mirrors underneath a small wading pool, and then you just push the water on it. You shed a light on it, and then you get that in the background up on the walls. Like, oh, they must be by the water. Look at that.
Now, did it take a long time to figure out what the effect would be? I mean, who came up with the idea of putting a mirror in the water?
I have to say it had to come from legitimate theater. I have to, because that's the source of everything.
Right. And it's just, and it was a lot of it just trial and error?
Well, yes and no. If you were going back to motion picture, you could do more with motion picture. When we were doing the Ed Sullivan shows, we were doing it live, and there was no time to do a process. So, for instance, one of the cameras for when they were doing the music shows, let's say it was rock and roll, they had a 6-sided box filled with mirrors, and they'd spin that, and it became like a kaleidoscope. So they could do on-camera stuff for
So you
for
did
video.
do the Ed Sullivan Show.
I did the last few years of the Ed Sullivan Show. That
You never got the Beatles, huh?
everybody asked me that. No, I'm not that old. This beard makes me look that old, but I'm not that old. But I did a lot of the
Wow.
band, the Fifth Dimension.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah.
some better, some not so good.
So take me back to that. So we're doing the Ed Sullivan Show. Do you know in advance what your responsibility was going to be for that particular show?
Whatever they told me to do, I was working with a crew that had been doing this for 20 years.
Right.
And I was just like this young kid who would come in and they would say, "Okay, you're going to put the lead weights in the carriages so the scenery can fly out." So I went all the way up to the top. Because when you see a theater, that's not where it is. There's also the same distance above it for all the scenery to go away.
Yeah.
So to do that, it gets heavy. So at Sullivan's Theater was a counterweight. So I would just load that. And then gradually, once they realized I wasn't going to kill anybody and I was smart enough to do it, I started working on the floors. But to appreciate this, it was a live audience. They'd bring in an orchestra.
Yeah.
Orchestra.
Full orchestra, I remember.
Live, coast to coast. And these guys had it down. Not only did they have it down, but they've been doing it so long that there are various areas in the basement, they had things going for them. The prop department had a lot of Italians. For lunch, they would cook. They would cook their own lunches. They had it down to that. another group that he wanted to do RC planes, and he would build them down there. I mean, they were the most professional crew, and I would have stayed there forever. But one day Ed said, I don't want to do this anymore, and that was it.
Yeah. I mean, it was impressive to watch the Ed Sullivan Show.
It was impressive to be there.
Oh, God, I could imagine. I mean, to see an entire orchestra just appear and then disappear.
Listen to this. Friday night, there was nothing there. Nothing. It would come in off the trucks. We'd lay it out, put the weights in the things, and fly them up there. Then, after everything was available, then they'd start to light it. By Sunday night, when it was all over, we started taking it out and shipping it out. So from Friday to Sunday, all of that came in and left.
Wow.
I was like, wow, these guys are like magicians.
So, Rick, here's the big question. With about 1 minute left in the show, was it all worth it?
Oh, God, yeah. I met my wife there.
Ah, there you go.
I met my wife.
That made it worth it right there.
Yeah, she was a set decorator for many, many. In fact, this is her coat from Regarding Henry. She was a big deal. In her department, the set decorator was the lead person. So she was like the boss of everybody in that department, more or less. But I mean...
So it was an exciting life.
I loved it, Vinny. I really loved it.
So, here's a question. Is your life exciting? What can you do to make your life exciting? What people don't understand the jobs behind the jobs. And there's so many things. There's things that we see and we don't realize what it takes to make something happen. And you, my good man, were one of those people that helped to make things happen.
I could go on for days.
Rick, a pleasure having you here. A pleasure having you here. It was a treat to have you one-on-one with Rick Bruck.
First time I've been on camera.
First time he's been on camera, and how many times he made it possible for other people to be on camera. You see, and it's about time you're on the right side of that camera. So are you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of One-on-One with Mr. Rick Bruck.